Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Poremski. I'm the artistic director of your New York Piano Society, and I am so thrilled to present my very dear friend, Bryan Wagorn, who is an extraordinary pianist that I went to Manus with. But he has gone on to do incredible things, such as become assistant conductor of the Metropolitan Opera. He has done numerous coachings with the superstars of the singing world, and he is truly an extraordinary musician. And I'm so happy that Bryan was able to join us today. And as always, we're so grateful to Klavierhaus for this gorgeous space, these gorgeous pianos. In fact, this particular Hamburg piano has been played by Martha Argerich, Joachim Bronfman, and our friend Jean-Yves Thibaudet at the very famous Schloss Elmau festival, where I have also performed. And it is for sale, so you can contact Klavierhaus and buy this gem before I do. Without much further ado, here comes Bryan Wagorn with 4 of our star members. And we're starting with Andrew Throdahl and Daniela Velez, who's joining us for the first time, and then Arabella Zito and Christian Popel. So enjoy, thank you, and do not forget that we have a concert on Sunday, November 5th at 1 p.m. at the 92nd Street Y at the Kaufman Concert Hall, and tickets are up literally everywhere, so if you can't find them, I don't know, let me know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Natasha, it's such an honor to be here. You're such a legend, and I love your playing so much. So it's really an honor. And I know you're all geniuses and amazing pianists, and yeah, I'll try to give what I can. And these days, obviously, I'm working more with singers and opera and that sort of stuff. So I'll try to bring that perspective, because that's something we're all trying as pianists anyway to emulate, right? The vocal lines and the orchestral aspects. So I'll try my best, and I can't wait to hear all of you. And I think we start with Andrew.
So I'll be playing the Shostakovich Prelude and Fugue in D flat major, Opus 87.
Shostakovich Prelude and Fugue, Opus 87, D flat major. Yeah, that sounds great. Good for you. That was so impressive.
It's kind of a mess.
Wait, the way it's written or the way you played it, you mean? Just kidding.
I'm very
It's,
nervous about like losing the strand, and then I can't
yeah.
figure out where I am.
Yeah. That's one of the, well, it sounds great. But that's one of the hard things about fugues. But how do you all practice fugues for that matter? Because that's something we all deal with, right? It's probably the hardest thing to execute from memory because you can't really rely as much on your muscle memory because it's sort of also about like brain memory and ear memory. But yeah, does anyone have any ways they practice that or? There's one way, it's really painful though. I think this comes from, well, Schnabel used to make his students practice this way, which is you play, let's say it's a 3-voice fugue, so you play 2 of the voices and you sing the missing 3rd voice. And so I know, you can do that for all the permutations. I think that's very difficult, but it's also very instructive. Another way I think is starting at different points, like maybe starting at each entrance of every subject entrance. I think that's a good way to do it because often what happens when we have a memory slip, we sort of panic and then we really can't do anything except go back or maybe go forward, but then we sort of lose where we are. Especially a fugue like this, which is fast. There's not a lot of time to process. If something goes wrong, we don't have a lot of time to sort of like make decisions. But that's one of the good ways. I think also studying just the score without being at the piano. I don't know if you do that, or I don't know if any of you do that. But yeah, we all do that. I'm doing that now. The next opera that I'm doing is a lot of notes, and like even just physically like doing it day after day is too much for me. So I'm studying the score, but that's a good way to do it. You could even practice writing it out, which is also very painful, but it's very instructive because then you'll see where your gaps are. But I think, yeah, in general, I would say as pianists, we tend to rely on finger memory and muscle memory, and that's important, but that will only get you so far, and if you're nervous and if something goes wrong, then you're kind of out of luck, and then you have to, you know, and I think often it's that, it's not that we're performing and we lose concentration, it's actually that our concentration is more heightened. And then we start to notice more, and we notice things that we didn't notice when we were practicing, because maybe when we were practicing we weren't focused as much, and then it's like, oh, I didn't know this line does this or that. So those are some of the ways you can practice, and some of them are more fun than others, but they'll all get some amount of results. I think it sounds really great. I love the energy and especially the strong playing. I think maybe even in the prelude, I think the challenge of a piece like this, where he basically like, I don't know if you have the score, if you can see it, but it's like there aren't that many dynamic markings, and he'll write forte, and forte lasts for like 3 or 4 lines, but then in the meantime it's like, okay, well obviously every note isn't going to be exactly the same. So yeah, so in any given dynamic marking you might have some parts that are really soft and some parts that are really loud. So I think one thing we could work on now is getting some of in the prelude, like I think that the strong parts speak for themselves, and they're really great. Then maybe some of the lyrical things, like for example, oh, I'm not going to play, but I'll just show you. Like for example, so this is quite, you know, we have the staccatos and the short notes and the rests, and then we have suddenly this really long slur. So maybe that can be more smooth, and also not to let the left hand accents influence the right hand, because I think you do sort of a da 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 da, you know, which isn't exactly how it's written. Do you want to try once just the right hand of this and try to make it as smooth as you can? Great, sounds beautiful. So I think for that sort of legato thing, I think it's helpful to not think of moving the fingers as much, you know? It's like, because you have really good articulation, but I think you don't want so much of the finger action for that sort of thing. So maybe just like keeping the fingers a little lazier and letting the hand or the wrist do it a little more. Yeah, that's the idea. And then it becomes a little uneven here, and I think it's actually because you're trying too hard with the fingers, because you have the weak fingers that you're using there, so it becomes a little uneven. So if you use a little bit the wrist more, I think that'll help. Does that make sense? I don't know if you think of things in those terms, or what I know we're all sort of like doing the same things, but then the vocabulary is sometimes different. But I don't think so. Maybe I would use that. Yeah. Is that more helpful? Yeah, I think that's better. Because if you use 4, those are a little bit weaker. So, Natasha's the fingering expert because I even write her sometimes, and I'm like, how do you play this passage? So the final word rests with Natasha, but in my opinion, it seems like using 3-2 there would be better. Yeah, absolutely. I think I stole your pencil. Wait, let me find it. I think it's here even. Oh yeah, sorry. No problem. I've had fix-it sessions with Natasha via text, or do you call them fix-it sessions? Okay, I love it. Emergency, yeah, I know. Yeah. Does that make sense though as a concept? Like, so any of this stuff, the stuff with the long slurs, try to think of it less articulated and more legato, just like maybe a violinist would have like a long bow, or a wind player might have like, the whole breath that they have to save for. But this, I thought this was all great. I would say once the melody comes in, this is a trick that I use when I'm accompanying singers too, is that you start quite strong, and then when the voice comes in, there's a way of kind of dropping the accompaniment a bit so that the voice gets highlighted. So I would say make this really strong, but then if you can drop a little bit once the melody comes in, then you'll have more freedom in the melody to shape it. So you don't feel like you're fighting against the accompaniment. You know what I mean? So just to drop a little bit so that then in the melody you can have like crescendo, diminuendo, shape, and you still have the articulation, but you don't have to compete with the accompaniment. Do you want to try it once? Good. And is there a way to join these with the pedal more so that you keep this? No, it's okay. I liked that though. Did you like that? I thought that worked really well. That was really good. Do you want to try one more time from the beginning? And I think keep the articulation up with it so the accompaniment still has energy, but just the volume can drop a bit. Good. One other thing, I find with pieces like that, again, where it's like a long stretch of forte, one of the difficulties is you end up with a lot of accents. So if you can avoid accenting all the downbeats, so bum 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 ba da 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 dum bum, but instead of bum 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 ba da da, you know what I mean? So maybe bum 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 ba da 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 da, so that at least some of the downbeats, you don't want to accent every downbeat, otherwise it loses some of the energy. But yeah, maybe drop there a little bit. And that's part of the cool thing, even about in the prelude. Of course, the fugue is obviously very contrapuntal, but in a lot of these, the preludes also have that. They have, even if it's just two parts, they have the parts doing very different things. And sometimes you have, like here, you have these accents in the left hand, and then the right hand that's very smooth without accents, or sometimes they're both lining up with accents like here. But that's part of the fun of the prelude already, to set up some of those, like, the differentiation of counterpoint and kind of shape within the two hands and the two lines. You want to try from the beginning one more time? I love that. That was great. I loved it. Oh, and by the way, if anyone has questions, like, let's make it informal. So if someone has a question, or maybe there's a piece you're playing that has a similar thing, just feel free to jump in, and we can make it like very community-based. Great. And again with the accent idea. So you have this slur, and then these ones are accent. Ba-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. I think make a bigger difference there. Ba-da-dum, bum, bum. Sorry. Ba-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. Can you try that once? Just the right hand, so we get ba-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. Exactly, because then we have two things going on. So it sort of becomes more like a mosaic, where you do have these long lines, but within the long lines, you have different articulations, different colors, different shapes, different accents. Do you want to? This is getting better. Does that feel good? Yeah. So I think the idea with that is that the right hand's kind of lazy, and then the left hand's actually quite articulated, if that makes sense. Do you want to? Wherever you feel good about. Great, it sounds great. Again, I would use with this slur. Ba-da-da, this is very lyric. Da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. More. Try to go against the beats here. Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. And then the left hand is going with it. Jump, brum, ba-da-bum. Nice. And here, because this feels like a new kind of orchestration, I would just take a split second so that this is different. Bum 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 da 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 da. Oh yeah, exactly. So and sometimes for those any piece where you have sharp contrasts, sometimes when I'm practicing it, I actually take a pause. So you could do bum 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 bum. Take a pause and then think of your new sound and then yum ba da da. Do you want to try that once, just as an example? So bum 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 pause. Bum 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 pause. Oh yeah, maybe just take a even bigger pause. So bum 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 and then new sound. Good. Bum bum. Great. Don't fall into the first beat. Dum ba 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 ba, but not ba 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 ba. I think it loses a bit of energy. Do you feel that? It's slight, but I think it'll feel stronger if you don't fall into the first beat. To anticipate it a little bit. So bum 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 bum, but not ba 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 ba. You know, I feel like the third beat goes a little too quickly to the first. It's just very subtle. But I think in this case, you want actually a very sturdy rhythm. I think there are parts like here where you want to kind of erase the beats. But here, because it's kind of the end of this section, I think it's nice to feel like the strength of that. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but just try it once. So bum bum ba ba bum 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 ba da 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 da. Good. And when you get to here, can you not accent this so that you can do a huge crescendo? Da dum ba da 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 da. Ba bum ba bum. Great. Can you give even more crescendo in the left hand? Because that's the part that's moving. Great. And you know what I find helpful? Don't jump off of the last chord, because then it feels like you might miss. I don't think you'll miss in this case, but it feels like too abrupt. Bum, ba, da, 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 da. Just hold it slightly. But not, you know, da, ba, da, 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 da. Bum. And then it lets you kind of breathe. It lets your arm and your body breathe before you get to the next section. Do you want to try maybe just there? Great. Did that feel good?
Yeah.
It gives you a little security. I think anytime, not that these are leaps, but anytime you have a leap that you have to do, or like some shift, it's nice to not jump off the key too quickly, because then you might miss. But you're not going to miss in this case. But even it just feels like more of an ending. And then this is again the case where we want really legato in the left and in the right hand. So try not to use the finger articulation as much, you know, just more loose. Can you try just the right hand there? Good. Yeah. It still feels a little bit too attacked. And don't start too loud on the first one. Sorry. Good. That sounds beautiful. And then the thing about that is that you can slightly overlap some of the notes. I don't know if you think in those terms very much, but you don't want, for this sort of passage, it's nice to have that legatissimo, so there's a little bit of overlap. Good. And then the left hand's doing exactly the opposite. bop, bop, really short. Do you want to try both together? Bop, bop. Beautiful. Da dum, ba dum, da 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 dum. Good. And then so you have these two separate things, and then it turns into octaves. So I think when you have the octaves, it should be a different color, maybe more cold or something like that. Like this kind of has a childlike quality to it, but then I think this is really menacing and really sort of cold. Do you want to try one more time? Nice, great. Good. And when you have these separate slurs, try not to connect them. So, you can even lift your hand. I like to think of lifting the hand almost like as a breath, because it then reminds me, like, with phrasing, obviously a singer would have to breathe, right? And that's what, it's not just that they have to breathe, and it's not just a technical thing, but it's also part of the expression. Because usually a composer would write a new phrase to be a different expression, or maybe there's a different text or something in the story is happening differently. So I like to use that as kind of a reminder, like a physical reminder. So when you have the end of a phrase, just like a slight lift if you can. Because pianists, we're lucky because we don't have to breathe, but if we don't put those in, it doesn't sound as expressive because it doesn't sound as vocal. You know what I mean? So this sort of thing, that basically there are these slurs for the phrases, and so that's why I was just mentioning to Andrew, it's nice, helpful if you kind of reminds you to take that breath as well. Oh, are we running out of time? Oh, okay, cool, thank you so much. You want to keep working? We didn't get to the fugue, but that's what you asked about. No, we have like 5 minutes, I think. Let's keep working on this, but maybe in the last like 2 minutes we can do a bit of the fugue. But do you want to just... but you understand what I meant for this, right? Yeah. Okay, let's just skip a little bit to the fugue. I think one thing with sort of contrapuntal thing, I find making the fast notes a little lighter tends to help certain things. I think when that's this principle that goes back to like the earliest days, like when you read these treatises in like Bach's time or Mozart's time, they talk about the long notes, like whole notes, having a little more weight to them, and fast notes having to be a little bit lighter. But I try to remember that in fugues because often it makes the parts more clear, and often what we want to do is the opposite. Like if we have a lot of notes, we focus on them a lot because it's difficult, and then we actually put them louder, and then it ends up being less clear. So, for example, when you have, even things like this, like focusing more on the long notes here to sustain the sound, and maybe not every single quarter note. You know what I mean? It's different if it's in the theme, but can you just start it one more time? Oh, one other thing. Again, with that breath idea, if you can like slightly don't anticipate the entrance of a subject, because it's nice if we hear the entrance right away. Now, you won't necessarily have the luxury of accenting it or playing it loud, but if everything is too connected without any sense of like then we lose a bit, and then you have to work harder to bring it out with the dynamic. So every time you're about to make an entrance, just take like a little breath in your mind or something. A little bit of a placement. Can you try one more time? Good. Good. you can practice. Sounds really great, actually. One thing I would do for a piece like this, practice it a little under tempo, but try to exaggerate the dynamics. Because what happened, so when you stopped, it sounded really good, but it sounded like each voice was a little bit kind of the same dynamic and a little bit lacking shape. So if you can practice it maybe like, 20 notches slower, but really think of exaggerating the dynamics. So the good thing about that is that it's not just a technical thing, but again, it forces you in your mind to really articulate to yourself what you want to bring out. Because if you're exaggerating something, it means you have to have some intention. Okay, I'm going to make this line forte and this line's going to be piano. Or I'm going to do this crescendo to this bar and then I'm going to diminuendo or whatever. So it forces your brain to sort of analyze those things and work on them. So I think for a piece like that, a fast piece, a contrapuntal piece like this, it's good to take it a little under tempo but exaggerate it. I think Horowitz talked about practicing that way too, exaggerating. And when we say exaggerate, we don't mean that it should sound like grotesque or pulled out of proportion, but it's just that for us, we have to kind of like highlight and emphasize those things to ourselves as we're practicing. But it sounds really great. You should be really happy. What else are you playing these days? Oh, nice, great. Oh, that's such a great sonata. How did you choose this? Is it your favorite of the set, or?
I watched on YouTube an analysis of the fugue.
Oh.
It was so interesting that I learned it.
It's amazing.
It's very hard.
It's very challenging. Yeah. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Bravo. Yeah, fantastic. Yay! And then, oh yeah, Daniela, I think. Oops. Yay, great to see you. What are you going to play?
I'll be playing the Larch 5
Oh, beautiful. Sweet. Yay. Yay. No. Oh, sure. Thanks. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much. gorgeous. Sounds so beautiful. I have to put this back on. Sorry. So, do you have specific things you were working on this, or things that you thought went better, went worse, or?
I think voicing for me is the biggest component I'm working on.
Sure.
Especially, I tend to be focused on the left hand, and then I forget
Yeah.
the melody with the right hand.
Okay, no, that makes sense. It's funny because I guess maybe because Andrew just did a prelude and fugue, I was also thinking like contrapuntally how pretty much all the music, whether it's a fugue or it's called this or that, most of what we do as pianists is like sorting out the layers of all of that. And often when we have a lot of notes, we focus on that and then it sort of becomes the loudest thing, but actually sometimes we want it to be the softest thing. But okay, it sounds so beautiful. Just a few tips that might help. One thing is that when you have long notes in a melody, it's good to, you have to sort of think through it and listen through it, because what happens often is we play a long note and then the left hand is doing a lot of things, and then we focus on the left hand and then actually the right hand, it doesn't really sound like a melody anymore. It sounds like the melody kind of is just going to the next part. So if you can have da 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 ba da da, but not ba 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 ba, you know? Can you try just from here once? Beautiful. So what I hear is that because the left hand has to jump, the first one is accented. So bum, biad. I'm exaggerating it, but we all do that. It's just a technical thing. So even though it's easier to play it with an accent because we're jumping, could you make it extra soft so that the melody still sings through? Try it a little slower if it's helpful. Good. That's much better, actually. Much, much better. While I'm thinking of it, you know, another trick we can do, I don't know if you ever try this, but because often when we're playing soft, we get tense or we're afraid the note's not going to come out. But I have a teacher that gave me a trick that's really helpful, which is basically to start, first you start just sort of like, I don't know, you can say the word like ghosting, like you're just sort of touching the key. And then you do a little more, so a little bit more comes out. So that way you're starting literally at 0 and then working a little bit up, rather than playing it mezzo forte and then trying to make it quieter but then getting tense. Do you want to just try that once? So literally don't even make any sound, just kind of tap the key. Yeah, and then keep really loose as you do it. Yeah. And now do you want to try it once, just a little bit of sound? And still really loose, yeah. Good. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling of it. Now, do you want to try with the melody and see if that helps at all? Did it feel better? Did it feel? Yeah, because again, a lot of what we do as pianists is like we have 2 hands, but we sort of only have 1 brain, but we actually need 2 brains. So the more you can do to separate those things, the better. Also, I think as you do it more, thinking of the different approach to the key. Like I feel like for the melody, you'll want to play more deeply into the key, you know, sort of like right to the bottom, still relaxed, and maybe overlapping the notes like we talked about with Andrew. Whereas the accompaniment, it's more sort of floating over the key. I feel like for the accompaniment, you don't want to really go like that, you know? It's more sort of this floating thing. Do you want to try it one more time with that in mind? So the right hand's like playing really deep into the key, and then the left hand's kind of just gliding. That's the feeling. So now some of them didn't come out, so then it's a matter of working and all that sort of stuff, but I think that's a good way to approach it. Okay, now back to the beginning. Another thing, so you have these broken chords. So just if you can't, well, you don't have the music in front of you, but there are these like ripples and then the broken chords. And one thing that's really helpful to remember is that you can break those at different speeds. If there's a harmonic shift, maybe you want to stretch it a little bit. So even though in the notation it kind of looks all the same, it's nice for expression and for color to vary it a little bit. So maybe the first one you want to draw out a little bit just to set the harmony, and then here we're kind of in the middle, so that one will be a bit quick, and then maybe the last one you want to stretch a little bit as well. I mean, that's just an example, but do you want to try it? So maybe even start fast, and then slower. Nice, yeah. Do you want to try just the left hand? Just those? So slow, ba-da-da-dum, and then a little faster, ba-da-dum, and then a little slower, da-da-da-da. Yeah, just as an example. So we have those tools for the purpose of color and expression. And it doesn't have to be that. It could be the opposite. It could be that you want to start with fast and then maybe slow them down. But there were a few where there's a big harmonic shift. And there I would take a little bit of time with it. Now, going backwards still to the very first bar, because we kind of started in the middle. But this, I think, because it says recitativo, it says, so this marking is andante quasi recitativo. And so, again, in opera, when you have a recitative, that's usually where all the important information is being delivered. So it's like you're reciting information. So usually there are a lot of words, there's a lot of plot change, there's information, this person stabbed this person, this happened, you know. So in terms of how we translate it here, I think what we have is it's like a very meaningful, heartfelt, like something's being delivered. It's not just a sort of aria or singing thing. There's actually like deep meaning in each word or note, let's say. So could you try it one more time? And you know, you have the crescendos and things, but just try to imagine that this opening, it's like it's like an oratorio. You know, someone's coming out and like speaking and saying something really, really important or really meaningful. Good. And then one last thing. I think even though they're written as even quarter notes, like when you have words, I mean, even if words are certain syllables, like each syllable has a certain weight, right? So certain syllables will stretch. It's not that the word is written that way. It's just that that's how we learn it and that's how we communicate, right? So in this case as well, we have 4 even quarter notes, but I think they don't have to be totally even. Like the composer writes them as quarter notes because that's kind of the notation we have available, but each one can be a little bit different. So maybe, I liked what you did actually, maybe stretching towards the end. And then going up the 4th, maybe you take a little bit more time because it's a bigger interval. So, diam, ba, ra, ra, ram, biada. Something like that. So stretching and then moving a little bit and then stretching towards the end. Ba, ya, ra, ra, ram, yada. Something like that. Yeah. How does that feel? Yeah. Does it feel arbitrary or does it feel good?
It feels like a statement.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. It's beautiful. Do you want to keep going? Oh, one other thing. The register changes, right? So maybe you can, when the right hand goes up to the top, you can do a different color. That's the other fun thing. Like we always talk about playing orchestrally and trying to emulate the orchestra. And like for example, I know, Christian, you're playing Beethoven, right? So, you know, in the classical period, often the instruments had, they were actually made so that each register sounded different. So we're used to the pianos, it's supposed to be homogeneous, right? Like when you're looking to buy a piano, you want to make sure all the registers sound even and that. But in the classical era, it was actually the opposite. They wanted, you know, the low part to sound a certain way, the higher part to sound a certain way. And so it was kind of more orchestral in a way. It was inherently more orchestral. And sometimes we lose that a little bit when we're playing the piano because we're so used to trying to make everything sound the same. But that's something you can bring back a little bit. So when you go to that high register, imagine that it's a different color and a different sound world or a different instrument. Do you want to try? You want to try that one more time? Actually, it sounded really good. Beautiful. Maybe making the very end. Oh, you wrote it already, but could you do even more diminuendo at the end? Beautiful. Gorgeous. And do you want to keep going? And one other thing, you know, when you have these small kind of grace notes, written in the score. I know for every style it means something different, but it's nice, since he did write it as small notes, it's nice if they have something different in the sound. Because now it kind of sounds like it's just like big note. Exactly. So I don't know, maybe it means like stretching them more or doing them softer or just something to make it more special, because It's interesting. The first 2 bars, the melody is actually quite simple. It's basically like a scale, and then going to this. It's actually a very simple motif, and then here it gets a little more intricate. You know? So it's kind of like blossoming as it goes. Beautiful. And then really soft. Good. One other thing to work on, I noticed, just a technical thing. It feels like they're not quite, they don't have to be perfectly even, but it looks a little uncomfortable the way you're doing it. Can you try one more time? Yeah, so I think because of the shape of your hand, you're holding this and it looks really uncomfortable. So can you maybe move your hand more? Let your hand carry you. Don't try to stretch with the fingers. I know, I've had injuries. I don't know if anyone's had injuries, but, oh, are we? Okay. Oh, you have? Oh, I thought, okay. We've all had injuries. Yeah, it's such a faux pas, or it's getting better, but so I think anything you can avoid from like twisting and turning and things like that, it's really helpful. And there are certain things I think that are counterintuitive, like when you have this big stretch, instinctively you think, okay, I have to like do this, or I have to like stretch my fingers, or I have to do this. But actually, I find it's most helpful if you're using like the bigger units, like moving your wrist or your arm. And again, since I'm around singers a lot, I think in terms of even the pianistic technique, like singers are basically, they all say like everything's coming from the breath, and everything else that happens, like you have to have the breath solid, and then after that everything is like more subtle. And I try to think as a pianist like that too. It's like obviously our fingertips are touching the keys and producing sound, but if you think too much of these little joints, I think can get tense, and you can get injured. So I try to think of like the core and the arms and the shoulders. So for this, yeah, just the hand move. Good. And then also don't forget, once you've played it, you don't have to, because you're playing it with the pedal, you don't have to hold on to it anymore, because that again is a little bit tense. Good, yeah. Beautiful. Great. Beautiful. And since this happens twice, can you make the second one somehow different? Maybe take even more time, or make it even softer. Beautiful. That's gorgeous. Nice. I liked that. Good. And now, so this was kind of like an introduction, and now let it flow a little bit, I think. So now we had this andante recitativo, now it's just andantino, so now it's really like the aria. So just let it flow. Again, even physically, brum, ba, da, dum, ba. Just let it glide, the left hand. Bum, yad, jum. Beautiful. One other trick. I find that when you have accompaniments like this, it helps to think over the beat. So brum, ba da da rum, ba, instead of brum bum 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 bum. Even technically, it feels better. So gives you a little time. Ya da da rum, ba da da yum ya ra ya ra. So don't think too much. Give yourself a little time for the bass notes to register. Yum ba da yum ba da. Does that make sense? So even though, because again, the notation that we have is a little bit limited, and certain times you kind of want to go against the way it looks on the page. So even if they look like even eighth notes, it sounds better and more expressive, and it's easier if you just give a little more time for that first eighth note. Good. That made a big difference. Good, great. Just don't accent the next one. Don't do brum, ba da da, because then it breaks up the line. But that was much better, actually. Bum, ba da da rum, ba da. Good. Ba da 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 dia. It also gives you more time to change the pedal so that you can hold it, because it's getting a little blurred. Some of the changes are a little blurred. So that holding that bass note the extra split second lets you change more quickly. Can you try just from the start of here? Like, for example, here you have the harmony change, so just make sure it registers, the pedal changes and the harmony change registers. Good. Beautiful. So that's the idea for that. Let's jump ahead to some of this. This was excellent, technically. I think you could get a little soft. I think it'd be nice if this was really, really, really soft. Because the way he writes it, you have forte, piano, and then it looks like this is almost a subito pianissimo. Could you try what we did with Andrew, where you play the forte one, take a little break, play the piano one, take a little break, and then play the pianissimo, so that each one sounds completely different. Break. Good. Then soft, soft, soft. Good. I think the forte one can be a little stronger. And in this case, you know, so often in music we have like threes. We have a pattern. It happens in Mozart. It happens in Bach. But I think since you have sort of like strong, medium, and then soft, it's nice if the last one is extra. Like, don't make them evenly less. Make the last one especially quieter, because that's what makes it really interesting. So that you have sort of like forte, piano, and then pianissimo is really, really, really soft. Can you try one more time? Good. Soft. And then really, really, really soft. Beautiful. Now can you try it in context without the stop? Good. I think it doesn't happen suddenly enough. It happens eventually, and it sounds really good, but is there a way, I think also you'll have to lift the pedal a bit, so we lose a bit of the previous sound. Good. Yeah, that's the idea. I would work on it like that. That's really, really, really good. I think you can also give more on the top, in the right hand, the first few notes. You don't need every single note to be loud. So, you know, can you try it with that way? So make the dynamic mostly in the first few notes. Good. Good. Nice, exactly. Yeah, so you'll have to, and that's great that you did the crescendo, but yeah, so that's something you can work on for that. And then the main thing to talk about, I think this is really challenging. So you all heard that there are lots of fast notes, lots of notes in the right hand, and you kind of want it to just be a color, because the melody is still going in the left hand. Melody and accompaniment is going in the left hand. So it's a lot of multitasking. Can you try the right hand alone once, just as soft as you can? Even softer, maybe? Good. And one thing I find helpful for passage work is to group it, because if you're thinking like so many notes, it gets stressful for the brain. So if you can think in beats like da 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 da, and then think in like 8 groups. Da 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 da. Once you group it, it's a lot easier to play. Good. Can you, why don't for now you accent each group? So, but the non-accent ones make really quiet. Let's just try it. Good. You know, it actually doesn't sound that accented. It still sounds pretty smooth. And now can you add just the melody but not the accompaniment? I know that's tricky, but that goes back to the fugue thing, where like separating all of them. Good. I know it's hard to do that on the spot, but can you try it one more time? Because it sounds really good, but can you make it even softer? Like, again, not so much articulation with the fingers, but just kind of like gliding over the keys. You know, really, really soft. Good. Good. And again, when you have these things going down, whatever it is, I can't read it very well, but oh yeah, try to move your hand like in and out of the keyboard so that you're not stretching to get to the next note. Can you try from, oh, it's there, right? Can you just do it slowly once? Good, yeah, so I think when you're playing the thumb, your hand is further out, and then when you're playing the black notes, it's here. Can you somehow like equalize it so you don't have to go in and out too much? Good, that's much better. So you want it to just be like this, you don't want it to be like this, you know? I was exaggerating, but you know what I mean. Now can you try one more time with just the melody and the accompanying notes? Oh, sorry, in the right hand I mean, but not those ones, yeah. Really smooth, yeah. Good. Yeah, so that's still something you have to work on, but you get the point. Now try it with everything if you can. So I think already these should be even quieter than those. Good. Good, excellent, yeah. So again, I sometimes even for technique, I like to think of images. So I think for the right hand, just think of like, I don't know, like oil or something, like or water or something that's just flowing. And not really articulating too much, but like something that's just kind of like dripping or something like that. That's really good. Let me just glance through. I know we only have like a minute or so left, but is there anything else? Oh, one last thing I wanted to say. Because this piece is set up kind of like a set of variations, right? Try to make each one really distinct. Like I feel like this one with the chords should be a completely different sound world. Can you try this one? Good. Yeah, that was great actually. Yeah, so this kind of variation will be like lots of weight, very loose arms, really playing deep into the key. And the preceding one is like very well, this one is very feathery. The right hand will be more floating over the key. And then here, I think you can take as much time as you want. Bum, 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 and then bring out the C flat, because that's the surprise, right? It doesn't have it in the other parts, the iterations of the theme. Good, great job. No, it's really, really impressive. So those are some of the things I think to think about. But yeah, fantastic. Yay. Great job. So beautiful. And no one really plays this. I've never heard it live, so it's great to hear it. Do you have anything specifically that you worked on or you think went well or didn't go well or? Oh, that's okay. Great. There's one thing I was actually thinking about voicing, which is when you have chords and when you basically for this, it's a chorale style, but you really want to bring out the melody, right? So I find it helpful to practice it. You let go of the note that isn't as important, and then you hold the other one. Did you see what I'm doing? And you can do it in the left hand too. So maybe you want the bass note coming out. Do you want to try that once? Because it forces you to focus on the voice that you want to bring out. Good, yeah, yeah. Good. Good. Do you want to try with the left hand as well? Maybe you want, yeah, you probably want the bass note. Bum, bum. Good. You know, for fingering, I think, can you try it again? Yeah, that's good. I think that's good. Yeah. Can you try with both parts, just that bar, with both hands? That's already better. Does that feel better? Yeah, that's a really good way to practice. Anything you have where the voicing is tricky, play it so that you're holding just the note that you want to bring out, and then all the other ones you can kind of let go of, and then it forces those ones to be a little more relaxed, and the one that you want to bring out is like a little more present and deep in the key. And you know, in the end, you'll probably end up actually playing it like that anyway, because you have the F sharps. You can't really repeat those without coming up anyhow. So, do you want to try from here one more time with pedal and with everything? Good. Good. That's great. Voicing's really good. Now let's work on the overall shape. So we basically have this line. It's kind of a descending line. So I think maybe you can come away a little bit, maybe a little diminuendo. And then this, it's kind of like, well, it's a rising line. We have the sforzando, but then we have the accent. So we don't want it to be so loud. So maybe sforzando, come away a bit, and then crescendo to here. Let's try it. Beautiful. Make sure that you land on this. The tendency is that when we crescendo so soon that the point we get to actually isn't louder than the previous point. So if you could try really getting to it. Beautiful. Good. Good. And can I just try something once? I think when you have, I'll just, if that's okay. Yeah, when you have the return of it, maybe you can just take a little time to show that. Like sort of like a breath, because the slur ends there. So I think this bar can be a little bit out of time. Good, you're losing a bit of the voicing, but I know because we're working on multiple things now. But just to keep in mind, if you can still emphasize the outer notes a little bit more. Yeah, let's try from there. Good. 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 Yeah, it has kind of like a funeral march quality to it. So again, just to highlight the differences, this opening theme is kind of like rhythmic, dyam, bam, ba, da, then more lyrical, dia, da, 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 dyam, bam, ba, dam, ba. Maybe this can be a little flexible too, maybe going towards the downbeat. And then it goes back to this kind of like objective, like funeral march kind of thing. Good. Let's start back at the beginning then. This is like the Moonlight Sonata, the last movement, and he wrote it only a few years after Beethoven died, so I don't know if he had Beethoven in his mind, but he probably did. Again, when you have the harmony change, you can just set it a little bit. You can change the pedal and then hold these over so we don't have the harmony from the previous time. You know, of course we have the pedal, but we also have the finger pedal, which is like overlap. We both of us talked about this, or all three of us talked about this so far, where if you don't want to just sustain things with the pedal, you can also sustain it with the fingers. I think in a case like this, it's really good actually. You can basically hold them over, and then you don't have to use quite as much pedal, so then it doesn't sound as muddy. It also gives you a little more control when you're performing in a room or on a piano that you don't know as well. Because I've found that sometimes you go into something and you think, oh my God, I'm pedaling, and it's like, it sounds so blurry and the acoustic's so messy. But if you're in the habit of controlling with your fingers, I think it can be a really good thing. Because then you're not just at the mercy of however the pedal on this specific instrument sounds, if you know what I mean. Do you want to try one more time? Good. Excellent, great. So I can, you know, we talked about exaggerating things or highlighting things. I know you're doing the crescendo, but it doesn't read as well as it could. I think you have to highlight them a little bit more. So could you do a little more crescendo? Make sure it goes right to here, and then a big diminuendo, and then this can be, you know, really make a big deal of it. Good. And then drop away, soft, soft. Good, much better. Beautiful. Piano. Take time. Beautiful. Gorgeous. Excellent. Good. Great. And then I think this section can flow a little bit more. So a lot of times, just like we talked in the Shostakovich, where you have like several lines of just one dynamic, often you have pieces, especially classical or early romantic, where you don't have any, you have maybe one tempo marking, but expressively it works better if you have somewhat of a flexibility. Just like you would have rubato in a phrase, you can also have this kind of larger rubato where you'll have like each section being a slightly different tempo. So this is, there's no new marking, this is all andante, but because the left hand has this pulsing, brum, bum, I think it makes sense to let it flow a little bit more. And this chordal thing, diam, bum, ba, da, is kind of more stately. So you don't need to have exactly the same like sort of metronome marking all the way through. You also don't want to change so much that it sounds like, oh, we're suddenly in a allegro or something, you know? So that's another challenge in interpreting this sort of music, is finding the flexibility but also keeping the structure as a whole. Does that make sense? Do you want to try? Do you want to try from here? So yeah, just let it flow a little more. Nice. Great. Build, build, da, 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 da. Great. Drop. Great. Great. Good, great. So can you keep this as one phrase? Try not to break it up too much because the articulation is already so broken up. It's nice if you can work against that and keep the phrase a little bit longer. Also, try to show like this little deceptive cadence sort of thing. Da 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 dum ba. Oh, sorry. Here. Dia da 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 dium ba da da da. Again, it's not written, but I think it's nice if you take a little breath. Ba da 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 dium ba da 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 dum ba da da dum. Breath. Ba ba da 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 dium ba da dum ba da. Dium ba da 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 dia da. Bum ba da. Yeah, I think this section needs the feeling of breath. By the way, Mendelssohn was so multi-talented. You know, he painted watercolors. He had all these talents. He was a really brilliant guy. Do you want to try? This was beautiful, the pianissimo. Do you want to try maybe from around here, something like that? Beautiful. Breath. Breath. Yum. Oh yeah, sorry. I distracted you, sorry. Great. That sounds great. It feels a little aggressive. Could it build, but maybe you need more like wrist. You know, but not a little more lift on it, I think. Can you just try that once, just the right hand? Yeah, good. Good, yeah. Beautiful. That's great. Does that all make sense up till there? I think it's a good practice, even just, I talked about the wrist at the end of the phrase, but even just like literally breathing. Also because when we're performing, if we get nervous, that's always something that happens as well. Our breath tends to get locked up or we get tight or, so the more you can remind yourself to breathe, the more relaxed you'll be. I mean, everyone, not just musicians, but like tennis players and athletes, they all do breath exercises. So it's nice when we can incorporate that into what we do because it also is part of the expression. And it also happens to like be something that'll relax us and calm us. Okay, good. This part was really good. Maybe we can go, this is a lot of the same. Do you do the other movements, or at least not now? Oh, good. But you don't have them with you anyway. Oh, do you want to do the part of the next movement? Because it sounded really good so far. No one ever plays this piece. Does anyone have any questions in the meantime, or something that they wanted to ask? Or, okay, cool. Let's just do a bit of it. I'll just sit here. again, you have sort of two things. You have bia-dum and then a new thing. Da-da-da-ba-ba-dum, bia-dum. It's nice if you can bring those out as separate entities. Just like if this were an orchestral piece, you would have maybe the winds and then the strings, or vice versa. Can you try it once? Bia-dum, new, new, yum-ba-dum. Good. And then watch the turn. It's nice if the turn feels a little spontaneous, but to make it sound spontaneous, you have to plan it a little bit. I think the hands aren't quite coordinated. What's your plan for the timing of that? Yeah, maybe start to the next note right away, but don't hold the C sharp too long. Yeah, that's better. Good, and keep this legato, and then only those are staccato. Ya-da-dum bum bum, ya-da-da-dum bum. Bum bum, ba-da-da. Good, and then these ones have the slur with the dot, so I think that's, again, slightly different expression. I think it can be, oh, you wrote anyway, change of color, but it can be a little detached, but also a little more emphasis. Can we try the whole phrase one more time? Exactly, so you can play them short but with pedal, and then it kind of makes the articulation you like. Good, one more time through and then going on here. Good. Could you do a big crescendo and then piano subito? Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Excellent. Good. And then because this is so cute the way it ends, don't rush into it. So here, ba 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 bum, ya da da, and here sing ya da dum, ya da dum. Can you try this maybe from here? Also, we want to hear that it's two voices. I know it's hard to do. We want to hear bum ba da, but not bum bum ba da dum bum, right? So if you can maybe accenting that voice is more difficult. It's harder to bring out separate counterpoints when the parts are closer together. If they were an octave apart or two octaves apart, the ear sort of naturally separates the things, but when they're in the same register, it's really hard. So we have to work extra hard in a place like that to give like different dynamic, different articulation, so we really hear the two different voices. Good. Excellent. Good. So we have so many figures like this in Bach and these sort of like organ-like figures. It really helps if you can bring out the non-repeating note, but not right, because otherwise it sounds too repetitive. It's good you can sometimes practice with two hands. And then practice with one hand. Do you want to try that with two hands? Do you ever do it like that? Or I know I'm not playing the right notes there, but just for the sake of demonstrating. But do you want to try it with two hands just to see? That part's a little harder, but for the sake, I often spend time practicing left-hand parts with two hands because often in those left-hand accompaniments, you actually have like sort of two separate voices anyway. Just like in an orchestra, you might have like the basses that are doing like boom, boom, and then you have the celli that are doing da 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 or something like that. So you really want it to sound like two voices, and to achieve that, sometimes it's helpful to actually just separate it, play it with two hands, so that in your mind it's clear that you have the boom, boom, and then you have the da 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 da. This one doesn't work as well, but I just wanted to make an example of it. But when you play it, yeah, I think bringing out the changing notes. That sort of thing helps. Do you want to try one more time with both hands? Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, as written, in other words, yeah. Good. One more thing. When you're playing the octaves, how are you thinking of voicing them? Are you thinking of them being even, or one is more than the other, or are you not thinking about it, or there's no right answer? I'm just curious. Yeah. Yeah, I think often with octaves like that, if you bring the fifth finger out or the top note out a little more, it sounds a little more transparent and a little more expressive. Debussy said that in an essay. He said that if you play octaves with the same voicing in each note, they sound dull. So if you bring out the top a little more, Martha Argerich does that a lot. If you listen, her octaves, the tops are always so prominently brought out. But yeah, if you think, again, you can practice the way I said, where this one's like really loose. Sorry, I'm not at a good position to be playing that, but I think bringing out the top a little bit helps it, because it's supposed to be soft, and if you bring both of them out, it sounds a little thicker and a little bit louder. You want to try one more time? Maybe just the right hand, yeah. Good. Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Yeah. So technically, I'll reverse it. But if you're bringing out the fifth finger, you can angle the hand a little bit that way. That tends to help. And then you don't have to actually even think about it. You just angle the hand a little bit, and it helps. Do you want to try with the whole thing now? Good. Good, and then we'll drop, for the piano, we'll drop more. But I think we're probably running out of time for this anyway. But do you have any final questions about this piece? It's great to just hear it live, honestly, because no one really plays this. And it's one of his earlier works, but he didn't live very long, so everything's kind of an early-ish work in his case. But yeah, no, great job. Really fantastic, yeah. Yay. Yay. And then, so it's Beethoven F minor? Oh, cool. Yay, can't wait. Oh, sure. I don't think I'll write anything. I'll just try to remember it, but. Great job. Sounded wonderful. So do you have things that you wanted to improve or?
I do.
Okay.
Tension.
Oh, tension. Oh, that's good.
Historically, this has been my issue.
Okay. So do you mean like physical, technical tension or just like
Physical tension.
emotion? Oh, okay, okay.
Oh.
Cool.
And emotional tension.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like that's the hardest part of what we do, whether you're a pianist or oboe player or singer or whatever. It's like we're so emotionally committed to what we're doing and we care about it. But then if we have the normal physical reactions, we don't create the best sounds. Like, you know, this is a very intense piece, and if we were in an intense moment in our everyday life, we would seize up, we would get tense, but we don't actually want to do that because if we do that, then it won't sound good. So that's kind of like the paradox of everything. And so I think the key to that is partly also just analysis of the sound. Like, because obviously to create a certain effect for the audience and to create an emotional response, you have to create certain sounds, right? And you know, it's the same with a recording. Like if you hear a great recording, you don't necessarily know how the pianist physically was approaching that. You might be able to tell certain things, but you're just purely listening to the sound, and you don't know if they were 7 feet tall or 4 feet tall or whatever. You might know certain things, but you probably wouldn't know anything too much in detail. So yeah, for me, that's the key, like the listening aspect and the analysis of the sound, and then kind of putting everything together. And there are certain exercises you can do. Like I know that for certain things, like for staccato, I know that can make certain people tense. Oh, you did ghosting. Did you write that down?
Yeah, I just
Oh, okay, cool. I love it. I love it. Like, or even one thing I do, because I tend to get tense when I play loud, I tend to get tense, and then it sounds like it's banging, and it doesn't sound as good as I want. So you can play a phrase and then just stop and like breathe and relax, and then go to the next phrase. Because it is true that if you get too physically tense, you're not going to create the sounds that you want, right? And even like, I mean, I'm trying to think of certain pianists, like certain known pianists who actually do have a very tense physicality, but there's still something in them that's like very calibrated and worked out of what they want to create. So it's not locking up, or it's not a deficit, it's just part of what they do. But why don't you try that actually? So make this really, so it's piano, it's also very menacing, right? So why don't you try the first phrase, and then just take a little bit of breath, and take 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 1 second, whatever, and then just kind of analyze how you feel, like if you got tense or not. Oh yeah. Good. That didn't look too tense to me. Did it feel like it? No.
No, I could show you the.
Oh yeah. Let's go to the specific
It's
spots.
really just when my hand is extended.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's in that really bombastic area.
Ba-ba-da-da.
Oh my God, I've memorized so well. So this area.
Okay. So let's try that then. So let's do whatever, 2 bars,
Okay.
and so then do the 2 bars and then stop, and then analyze how it sounded and analyze how it felt.
Okay.
And then we can talk about it after the 2 bars. Good. Okay. So let's just do that. So what did it feel like? Did it feel not comfortable?
Locking up naturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could probably practice several ways to get that to be more relaxed.
I think there are a few things. Sorry, where was it? It was here, right? Yeah, I think the left hand is working too hard. That's, again, the thing we talked about. Like, often when we have a lot of notes, we work harder than we need to. So again, you want to bring out this. You don't want this. Can you just do it a little slowly once, just the left hand? Good. I don't know if that fingering might work. I don't know if I would use that finger. I would at least start with 2-4. I think it's a little easier. I don't know, but it's personal. That could work too. But I think if you're doing 3/5, because it's then focusing on some of the weaker fingers, a little bit. Do you want to try it with 2/4 once just to see? Does it feel better at all? Or maybe that's a good way to do it. Now again, for this sort of thing, you don't want to use you don't want to use the fingers too much. It's more kind of like this rotation, because then you're basically rotating towards the note that you want to emphasize. Then it takes a lot less effort than if you're trying to do it strictly with fingers. You know? So can you try it? Keep loose. Try one more time. It's just slower, I think. Good. Yeah. How does that feel?
Yeah, well, naturally, whenever you're doing that, it goes towards the note.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the trick. Yeah, you definitely want to do that. And then is the right hand okay, or does the right hand feel problematic as well? Ba-dum, da-dum, ba-dum. Again, I think you want to emphasize the top note. Dia-dum. Yeah, so let go of the thumb note. Da-dum, ba-dum, ba, ba. Yeah. Good. That's better. Okay. Yeah. Can you? Also having a. Again, the more you analyze, the better. I think if you crescendo a little bit, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, ba-dum, and then drop. This should be quieter here, I think. Let's try that.
Okay. Hands together.
Yeah. By the way, is that? I just have E printed there, or is because you're switching to G?
Yeah, no, I shouldn't be doing that.
Good, good. So it's a little better. It still feels a little like you're working too hard. That's something that you'll. So there are lots of things in piano playing that you won't be able to do it on the spot. It'll just take a few days, a few hours, a few weeks, months. Like certain concepts just take repetition. So within the context of the first movement, you could choose your spots. Like that's a spot that jumped out because you mentioned it. So maybe that's something you'll just have to practice. 2 minutes a day or something like that, or 2 minutes every second day or 5 minutes, whatever you do, but you, sort of like going to the gym, that you have it in a habit, and it'll get a little bit easier each time. Verdi talked about that. He called this the daily work of the file, and it's not just for musicians, it's for anything, where like every day you get a little bit better at something, and maybe you take some steps back, but basically you work constantly a little bit better, and then after time, after a year, after a month, you're at a way, way higher spot than when you started. So I try to remember with practice, and that's one of the frustrating things, but also one of the interesting things. Like certain things just take a certain amount of time, you know? And it's nice to be able to play everything as you want it on first hearing, but that doesn't really happen. Doesn't really happen with anyone, you know? And also I think if everything came so easily, we wouldn't enjoy it as much. You know, part of the reason we enjoy playing is because there is an element of challenge. And if we could just sit down and play any piece of music perfectly exactly the way we wanted it, it would kind of be a little bit boring in a certain way. So yeah, that's certainly something you can work on, the rotation. There's another thing I thought of, which is that these triplets, sometimes they get a bit lost. So I also like to practice sometimes, because once we hear the sound and we have a certain sound we want, we can get a little tense about it, but starting even just like on a surface, like da-da-da-da, you can even practice like on this, da-da-da-da, just so that you're like conscious of, okay, are my fingers actually doing it properly? What exactly is happening? That sounds good.
I was trying to add imagery to it, but it wasn't.
That's okay. But that looks like it should work and translate. So let's see if that translates. Yeah, so somehow the N gets lost. Yeah. So what are you hearing? Which notes are coming out and which aren't?
Definitely the beginning of the motive, but not the end, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like getting lost.
Yeah. So
Quickly.
And which finger are you using for the last note? The second? So I think for that you'll have to think of the second finger more. So this is again part of the analysis, because there have been times where I'm practicing and I think, oh, this passage, I can't play this passage. And then when I really break it down, I think actually it's just one note, or it's just two notes, or it's because my thumb isn't bent or curved or whatever. So the first step is the analysis, so that you know it's not even, but you have to figure out what exactly it is. So now we know it's the second finger on the F. So let's try, see if we can get that better. Good, see? I think it's the thumb going, I think it's the thumb and the second finger that's difficult. So can you just try that? Yeah, the thumb's a little heavy. Da-dum, bum. Yeah, good. So I wouldn't practice it, that's fine, it's really just this. And if you need a different fingering, that's okay too. Dun. I don't know if that's more helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would be easier for me, to be honest.
I know another practice would be playing them all staccati, and so like
Yeah,
harsh staccato
absolutely,
lifting.
yeah. So that you get used to the finger articulation. Yeah. So when you do that, just make sure you're not getting tense. Because the point is to articulate the fingers, but you don't want to become tense about it. And also, like, we all do that. We have certain ways where to achieve what we want, we have to practice it a way that's different from how we actually want it to sound in the end. So in this case, I mean, in the end, you don't want it to be forte or super articulated, but it's a good way of practicing it. But then don't use that practice method as a substitute for actually analyzing what you want in the end. You know what I mean? Yeah. One other thing I wanted to say about this sonata, just because it's really interesting, but with any pieces of Beethoven, he basically constructs everything out of like little motifs. So you basically have, and I'm not saying this to make it sound like a theory lesson, but it's actually so integral to the expression. So you have this arpeggio, right? And then you have this little motif, and then these sforzandos, which is basically a crescendo, he tightens it, right? Dum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, dum. So it's also nice to analyze structurally what he's doing. Then in this next theme, it's this, right? But it's inverted, and it's with a slur, and it's piano. So you want to bring that out. You want to make it very contrasting to this. It's kind of mirror image of it, but it's very different. Also, when we have it here, it's unaccompanied, and here we have this. So you can bring out that bum, 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 bum. And then as we go, the closing theme, dum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da. Yeah, exactly. It comes from dun, da-da-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da, right? That's kind of like the narrative journey that often in pieces by Beethoven you have. Like the motifs are getting transformed, and that's kind of like, yeah, it forms the narrative, the musical and the expressive narrative. So it's nice to analyze things from that point of view as well. Here, let's just start it one more time. Good. 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 Make sure that this lines up. That's supposed to be there, right? Good, exactly. And now, again, like we talked with the registers, now it's piano in the low register, but try to make it, like maybe this is violins and then this is like bassoon or cello or something, but it should have a different color. Again, I think, we talked about this for fugues. You want the long notes to sustain a little bit more. Yeah, bum, 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 bum. Good. 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 So this is a little loud. Again, can you just try it? Let's try it together. Just keep it really relaxed. Don't worry if the notes don't come out for now. Just keep it really soft. Yeah, that's good actually. Yeah. So when notes don't come out, is it usually the bottom or the fifth finger or the the thumb that's not coming out, do you think?
Sounds like the top.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something to be aware of in your mind. Again, I'm just saying that so that you can analyze it a little bit. Good. Let's try this again and keep this very smooth. So keep this as kind of like the opposite of what this was. Good. Again, you want to keep, try not to use too much finger articulation and just let your hand, it should be like deep into the key, very deep into the key, but like very smooth as well. Just try the right hand once. Good. Yeah. Chopin as a teacher, he talked a lot about suppleness. Like you want that kind of flexibility in the way you're playing and the way you feel. Nothing should feel tight or rigid. And you know that, but that's like another reminder of it. Because also it's just helpful to tie the technical things to the expression as well. So you don't feel that they're two different things and that you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose between being expressive or being technically solid, but they can actually work together. Do you want to try this? Good. Good, great. It feels again like this, you're focusing too much on every note instead of the sweep. The left hand can have that sturdiness, but in the right hand, you don't really want to feel the beats. Right, the right hand should. Yeah. Good, much better. Soft. Good. Again, and then breathe. Like take your time. It just differentiates the phrasing a little bit. Good. Beautiful. Good. So like see something like this. When you have that, your physicality changes where it actually shouldn't, because you're basically just doing the same thing.
Do I get tighter?
Yeah. It's like you suddenly jump to get up to that quarter note.
Yeah.
Look, it should just be that. It should barely change anything. Can you try from maybe there? Just a little.
I focus so much on the.
Yeah, exactly. So then your whole hand shifts. But you should prepare so that you're already in this position while you're here. Do you want to try from there? Oh, maybe without the left hand. And maybe don't use the fourth finger, because I think that's part of it. Can you use the fifth finger? Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And again, with this idea of kind of like using your hand, like it should just be that you're da 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 dum bum. It shouldn't be suddenly a new thing. Can you try it like this once? Just, yeah. And now take the B away. Now put the B back in. Oh, just stay on this one for a while. Now take the B out. Good. Now put the B in. Good. Yeah, so it should basically feel the same regardless. It shouldn't be a completely new thing. Now, can you try from there with everything? Good. That's better. Also, when you, so sorry to jump from different things, but the left hand, you shouldn't feel that you need to connect these. You can just move your hand. Ba da 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 ya da dum. So also because of these slurs, again, you can like just move the hand over. Da 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 ya da dum. Ba da 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 ya da 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 da. Can you try just the left hand? Good. Yeah. You know what a good exercise also I found, I was just thinking of, it doesn't have to do with this piece, but for getting rid of tension is actually just sliding from one key to the next. Because I feel like that you kind of have to be really free for it. Do you want to try it? Just with the thumb or whatever finger. Yeah, that's good actually. Try with some of the other fingers, maybe the fifth finger. Yeah. So the point is to use the same finger on both. Like, look, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. But that was good. 3, 3, 3, 3. Good. That's really good. Can you try in the right hand? That's great. That's always an exercise that helps me a lot. And actually, you might want to use that even for your fingerings. Like, yeah, that looks really good. That was much, much better. That helped a lot.
That was smoother.
Yeah, much, much better. Sometimes I put in fingerings like that because it forces me to relax, like sliding off the key. And Chopin did that a lot, apparently. You see in his fingerings, he slides. And it keeps it very expressive. Okay, and do you want to keep going from wherever you want to start? Good. Good. That was really good sound quality. Yeah, it was really good. Just one thing, try to bring out, I didn't really hear differences when it was the sforzandos. So they're always, in the left hand, they're always on that last beat, right? So, da-dum, ba, 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 ba. And these two. Can you try it once from wherever is helpful? Can you try, oh yeah, it's okay. Can you try where you just play the left hand and then only play the sforzando notes on the right hand? Don't play any of these. Nice. It's hard, right? It's hard, I know. Good, but the point is that that's what gives you the harmonic structure, and that's what you should be listening for. And don't focus too much on every single eighth note. You need the eighth notes, but if you focus on them too much, you'll lose too many other things. Exactly, yeah, great job. Okay, this, I feel like it needs to get, sometimes when you have a crescendo, like a long crescendo, it's actually helpful to start even softer. So where it's printed as crescendo, you drop a little bit. And I think this is the case here. Yeah. Can we try from maybe here? Good. Yeah, because we need it to feel like an arrival. Can you get, it helps to put more of the crescendo towards the end. So can the last bar have a lot of crescendo? Can you try from here, maybe there again? Nice. A lot. Good, that was really good. How did that feel? Good. Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. It just makes it more dramatic. Yeah. Okay, this is a lot of the same. Oh, careful not to change the articulation. Sometimes we change articulation based on where in the bar something falls. And in the case of the last three chords, we basically have staccatos, brum, bum, bum, which we want. You're holding the last one a lot longer because it's on the downbeat and because it's the last one. But if you could do, what is it? Dum, bum, 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 bum.
And I have been practicing just the pinky.
Oh, okay.
Which obviously
Oh, that's good.
helps,
Yeah.
But I haven't been practicing it long enough.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Can you just try the very end, just so we get those chords? Let me just see what would be helpful. Can you just do the right hand? Oh yeah, I think the fingerings aren't helpful because you're having to jump too much by using. Yeah, can you use 3, 3, 2, 1 there? On the D, on that chord? Yeah, can you do that? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. Otherwise you have to jump so much. Good. And one other interesting thing, look, it's fortissimo, but then he rewrites it on the last one. So I feel like these need to be really, really strong. Dum bum 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 bum. Yeah, maybe not dry like that, but at least not bum bum ba, you know. Good. Yeah, I think now the last chord was a little too weak. Sorry, not to make it too fussy, but yeah, it's interesting in Beethoven, the dynamics, because some composers, you get the feeling the dynamics are kind of just like the colors and the moods and things like that. But in Beethoven, they're also written at like structural points. Like he'll have, at the second theme, he'll have a new dynamic marking or a dolce marking or something like that. So even just by looking at the dynamic scheme, you can tell a lot about the structure of the piece, which is really interesting. Whereas in certain composers, like I said, it's not really about the structure of it. It's more about just kind of the color they want for that specific bar. But here it's like really structured, like the fortissimo in the last, because that's the very final cadence. He rewrites it just to make that point. Good. Does that help at all? Any of the things that you talked about? I think for sure, analyzing what is good and what's not working, and also maybe taking like a few seconds between phrases or between bars to relax. I do that a lot when I'm practicing. I think it's really helpful. So yeah, those are some of the things. But you definitely don't want to lose your passion for playing. You don't want it to be like, you don't want to be kind of like cold or without emotion, but you also don't want to be so involved that you're not producing good sounds that the audience doesn't want to listen to, you know? So that's kind of the challenge and the paradox of what we do. But yeah, sounds great. I'm so impressed by all of you. You're all amazing. Does anyone have any questions or anything else they wanted to play, or did that cover everything? Or no, you're amazing. You're amazing. Yay. Now Natasha will play all 4 Rachmaninoff concertos. Exactly. Exactly. You're amazing. Oh, you're so incredible. Thank you so much. Yeah. That was so fun.